Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bull Take Scouting Podcast. This is our second to last episode before the first round of the NFL draft on Thursday. And today we put up an Instagram story asking for your questions, as this is a Q&A session. And man, you guys gave us some great questions related to the draft on this upcoming week, and we're excited to get right into these.
Yeah, so let's just start it off right with the first question. And the question is Mac Jones actually worth the third overall pick? And Costa, we both have the same answer to this. I'll let you start it off.
Yeah, I feel like I've said this time and time again on this podcast, and I almost feel bad at this point, but you got to stick to your guns when you're a scout. I know I do not think that Mac Jones is worth the third overall pick. I have a third round grade on him, a 3.3, and I think that's going to surprise a lot of people tomorrow when we drop our positional rankings on our Instagram page. So stay tuned for that with the quarterback rankings come tomorrow, and I'm sure I'm going to catch so much heat and have to go to war in the comments, but I'll give the rundown right now as I have done before. I mean, there are things he does well. He's fairly accurate. He's a good distributor. He flashes a really nice deep ball, but at the end of the day, for me, I don't see top end arm talent. I don't see top end athleticism, and I think that those are two traits that are really increasingly important at the quarterback position if you're going to have success as a young quarterback in this league. And then beyond that, he's really praised for being extremely accurate, and I don't really agree. I think there's a lot of inconsistencies in his ball placement. You see his wide receivers making a lot of adjustments for the football, and that doesn't hurt his completion percentage or really hurt the flow of the game at all when you're watching his film, because his guys end up catching the ball anyway. So you're like, oh, I mean, good accuracy. He's a good distributor. He gets the ball to his stars. But no, they really do bail him out sometimes on some of those inaccurate throws. So when you put that all together, and especially that he's a 1-year starter at Alabama, and he's going to be facing such a difference in talent gap where there will be none in the NFL, or I don't think he should be the third overall pick, especially when you have extremely athletic, high ceiling prospects like Justin Fields and Trey Lance as other options at third overall.
Yeah, I think to me that's the biggest issue with the whole idea of picking Mac Jones at 3. I have a 3.4 on him, so I'm a little bit lower than you are. And like you said, we're both going to get quite a bit of pushback, I think, on Instagram comments, but that's fine. We can back up our grades and our analysis. I don't want this to turn into a completely hating on Mac Jones session.
Yeah,
I will point out that he's been rumored to be extremely, extremely smart.
Yeah, that's true.
And like if you take a step back and say, why would the 49ers pick Mac Jones? I guess it's because he's extremely smart. But going back to what you said about him not being athletic, and like you said, we also have other quarterbacks that both of us have graded higher than Mac Jones, much higher, that display a lot of athletic ability, including Justin Fields and Trey Lance. And to me, yes, this is a quarterback-driven league, so if you have to draft a quarterback ahead of where you have them ranked, I can understand that. I obviously wouldn't go 2.5 rounds above where I have a quarterback ranked. But, regardless, I understand if you need to overdraft a quarterback. I hate it when you have to overdraft a quarterback and take a guy that I have ranked 5th and you also have him ranked 5th. To me, it would just be a huge mistake. I think, yes, maybe Justin Fields and Trey Lance might need to sit a little bit and learn the game. But, people say Mac Jones is pro-ready. He might be because he was in a more pro-style offense than the other two, but he still only has 17 starts under his belt. I think it's going to be a hard transition for him. I'm not saying that he can't make the transition. He obviously has intangibles to be able to make the transition, but to me, it's a huge mistake when you have Justin Fields and Trey Lance sitting there for your taking.
Yeah, and I do want to go into the fit a little bit more because, I mean, if we're talking about the third overall pick specifically, that is the 49ers system. And, I mean, I know that Kyle Shanahan thinks very highly of himself, as he should, because he's an absolutely brilliant offensive mind. And so he really wants a quarterback who can think like he does and just execute his system, his game plan, what's going on in his mind. And I think that that's why they might be leaning Mac Jones and why he makes sense there. because he just wants that guy on the field who thinks like him. And given the really high football IQ that Mac Jones has been reported to have, that's why there might be more of that fit. And I do want to say that I think that Mac Jones would have way more success if he's drafted by the 49ers than any other team. I don't even think he would make it as a 10-year starter on a different team. But with the 49ers, I think he could be really a serviceable, maybe average NFL starter. Just because of how well he fits into that system and the talent he'd have around him, and how he wouldn't really be having to elevate the rest of the team. He'd just be having to do what Shanahan asks of him. So, I mean, he'll be better there than anywhere else. But what Shanahan could get out of Fields or Lance when you incorporate both their ability to get the ball out on schedule, which is developing, but definitely has so much upside, and then the extreme athletic traits that they possess and their physical arm strength, it doesn't make sense to me why you would take Mac Jones and limit yourself in that sense when you can really have your pick of the lot in this talented quarterback class and can take a guy with way more physical athletic abilities and upside.
Yeah, I think it's because it's such a big quarterback-driven league that a guy like Mac Jones is being pushed up draft boards so high. I think 5 years ago, Mac Jones would not have been in the first-round conversation at all. I think he would have been a guy that you saw go in the second round. And, I have a third-round grade on him, but I understand. If you need a quarterback, you think Mac Jones can be the guy, you're going to have to take him a little bit earlier. It's the state of the NFL now. Everybody's looking for a quarterback. Everybody needs a quarterback. And in order to get the quarterback that you want, you have to move up really high to do so. And I understand the fit for the 49ers. And to me, it would make a little more sense if you didn't have those other two guys also there to be able to pick for them.
Yeah, and I think we can move on to our next question, which is really interesting, actually. So it asks wide receiver, offensive line, Micah Parsons, or trade down for the Lions. And so I think that the Lions are really tough to understand here in the draft, because we've even had some people say that, look, quarterback's not out of question, and I definitely wouldn't rule it out. But right now, just how aggressively they are looking to trade down, which reports are saying, lead me to believe that they probably aren't targeting a quarterback, or maybe the quarterback that they would want is they've learned will be off the board. And I think it comes down to offensive line or Micah Parsons, because if they are moving down or trying to move down, they could be targeting Parsons, because you definitely could slide down a few picks and still get him. And he just seems like the type of guy who Dan Campbell would really appreciate. But I think that the most likely pick remains sticking at 7th overall, because it's just difficult to find a trade partner. In recent years, we haven't seen many trades in the top 10. And I would expect the pick to either be Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater. But I mean, I think that the fact that 4 options were listed here really says that there are a lot of options. And I do want to say that if Jamar Chase was somehow available, he'd be the pick. I just don't think he's going to be there.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can assume that Chase is going to be gone, either 5 or 6. You mentioned the idea that we haven't seen a lot of top 10 trades over the past few years. I think we might see more than we would expect. Just because we have 2 guys in Justin Fields and Trey Lance that we're assuming should be available past 4 or 5. If we say that Mac Jones is going 3rd overall to the 49ers, it doesn't seem like to me the Falcons want to trade out of there. They've explored trade out options, so to me that shows they're not going quarterback, like you said with the Lions. And I think they really do value Pitts very highly, and that's why their asking price is so high for the 4th pick. So let's assume the Falcons stay put and take Kyle Pitts. Let's say the Bengals either go Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase. 2 months ago, it seemed like it was going to be Sewell. Then it kind of transitioned over to Chase, and now we're kind of hearing both. But I have a feeling both of those quarterbacks are going to be there at 7. So I think if there is a team that really likes one of those quarterbacks, we could see them move up to 7. I think that's the most likely option for a trade up. I think, the Dolphins did whatever they could to stay in the top 6. I wouldn't be stunned to see them trade out of 6, but I wouldn't bet on it. So I'd say if there's a team looking to trade up for one of these quarterbacks, look at the Lions at 7 for that.
I agree, because I think that there will be probably both of the remaining quarterbacks out of the top 5 still there. So they probably could find a trade partner. If it isn't a trade down, I would expect an offensive lineman. And our third question is, are the Giants standing pat or are they trading down? And first of all, Dave Gettleman has never traded down in the first round of an NFL draft, which has prompted a lot of reaction when a couple of reports have come out that maybe this is a year where they do trade down. And for me, this is really just dependent on where the board ends up falling to the Giants, who's still there, because they've been connected to so many different players on both sides of the ball at several positions. I know Devontae Smith, or maybe Rashawn Slater if he's there. Cornerbacks like Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn have been linked to them. And then obviously they have a need at edge rusher. And it feels like almost every edge rusher has been linked to them. There's been Jalen Phillips, Kwity Paye, Azeez Ojulari. So it really depends on who their targets are and who's available when they're picking. But you know what, maybe they would slide back a few spots. Let's say we know Bill Belichick said in a press conference, sometimes a guy you think who's going to be off the board at 7, 8 ends up sliding out of the top 10, and you want to move up a few spots to get him. Maybe it's with the Giants. So I wouldn't rule it out. But it's just, again, like projecting trades is an inexact science, and it's always, I feel like, more improbable than probable. So I would say the Giants will probably stay put and just take whoever's the best available player on their board, because it seems like they're comfortable with a lot of these guys in this elite tier of non-quarterback prospects, and I think they'll just let the draft come to them and make that pick once they get to the number 11.
Yeah, I think you guys I would watch out for either of the Alabama wide receivers if they happen to fall to 11, Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith. I think either of those two guys could be a guy the Giants pick. I think, like you said, Rashawn Slater, if he's there at 11. Dave Gettleman loves his offensive line, so I would, again, not be surprised if he's the pick there. To me, honestly, I feel like if the wide receivers are gone, they might end up going edge rusher. It would be early, but we've seen the Giants take guys earlier than we would expect in the past couple drafts. We saw, Daniel Jones went earlier than we all expected. Andrew Thomas went earlier than at least most of us expected. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Giants take an edge rusher earlier than we would expect. I think Dave Gettleman obviously he doesn't like to trade down. There's probably a few reasons for that. One, he doesn't trust that the guy he wants is going to be to wherever he moves down to. And I understand that. If there's a guy that you really like, and yeah, picking him at whatever 11 this year might be a little high, but you don't want to risk losing him, then I can understand reaching for a guy. I know obviously if they go Kwity Paye, I think we both would. That wouldn't be too high, especially for you and me as well. 11 would not be too high for Kwity Paye, but I would watch out for those Alabama wide receivers and or an edge rusher for the Giants.
Yeah, I think that's a good analysis, and there's definitely a lot of options on the table for the Giants. And our next question is: do we think that both Travis Etienne and Najee Harris land in the first round? For me, this is pretty tough. I think I've got a good handle on Najee Harris. I think that Pittsburgh at 24 is really a likely landing spot for him. They're in desperate need of a running back. I think he's the best running back in this draft, and he's just a natural fit in Pittsburgh with that smash mouth, hard nosed, physical running style of his. So I think that makes a lot of sense there. But then I've heard multiple people say that Etienne could end up going before Harris. I know Eric Galco said that. He even said that he could go in the top 20. I know Lance Zierlein of NFL Network said that Etienne could be the first running back off the board, but I just struggle to see where. I don't really know where in the back half of the first round he would land. I certainly think he has the talent to go in the first round and deserves to. But I think right now I would think that it's more like a DeAndre Swift situation where you kind of see a lot of first-round projections, but he ends up going in one of the first few picks of the second round. I could see the Jaguars or the Jets at the top of round 2 snapping him up and getting great value there.
I think, the Jaguars, the Jets, the Falcons. I think we could possibly see both Etienne and Javonte Williams from North Carolina both go in, the top 6 picks in the second round.
Yeah.
To touch on the question, though, like you said, I think it's hard to find a spot for both the guys.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a while Najee Harris was connected to the Dolphins. It doesn't seem like they will go Harris at 18 anymore. It seems like they're leaning probably edge rusher or defense. Then other teams that are connected to Harris, the Jets at 23, I don't think that's going to happen. Joe Douglas has his positions that he likes to draft in the early rounds, and running back is not one of those. But the Steelers at 24, I think, makes perfect sense. I think it would be a great pick. If the Steelers opt to not go Harris, I think the Bills at 30 would be an intriguing option. I'm going to say that's his floor. I don't think he falls out of the first round. I think if Harris is there for the Bills at 30, running back might be their biggest hole on that very talented team. So I think if Najee Harris is there at 30 for the Bills, that's a major win. And that make a dangerous offense with Josh Allen, Najee Harris, Stephon Diggs. But if you had to ask me right now, I would say he goes 24 to the Steelers. And I don't really see that changing. I think it makes a ton of sense. In regards to Etienne, you said the Jaguars, the Jets at the top of round 2. And I mentioned the Falcons as well. The Falcons have a big hole at running back. I would not be surprised to see Etienne go there. So they'd be, pick 36? But I would expect to see Etienne and Javonte Williams go off early second round, similar to what we saw last year.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the correct answer. And so our next question is, who is the biggest potential surprise in round 1 other than Mac Jones at 3? And I don't think that's a surprise anymore. It's just really it was a surprise back when the rumors started circling. But I kind of struggle with this question a bit, trying to find obviously it's difficult to predict a surprise because it's a surprise for a reason. I think that Devontae Smith lasting longer than people think might be a surprise because while there's been a lot of reports that have come out that he may end up going to like the mid-teens, even maybe the late teens, I feel like the general public obviously has become infatuated with him as the Heisman winner. He lit up all of college football the entire season, including in the playoff, that people would really be surprised if he were to slide like into the mid to late teens. And I wouldn't put it out of question. I think if the Giants elect to go elsewhere at pick 11, if he's still there, then he could be on the board at 15 when the Patriots pick. And I'm not sure what Bill would do. I think he would strongly consider him, but there's definitely an easy path to seeing Devontae Smith being available at 15. For another thing, I've heard a lot that Jamin Davis is expected to go way earlier than people think. Albert Breer said he could see him going even in the top 20. So I think if you want a prospect that might go later than people think and one that might go earlier than people think, I would say Devontae Smith could fall a bit, and Jamin Davis could be an early surprise.
Yeah, I think a guy that might surprise a lot of just average draft fans would be Rashad Bateman. I don't think that's been a name you've seen in the first round over the past few months. He's a guy that we both really like. We have first round grades on him. But he's just not he's kind of fallen out in the general public. He opted out, or he played a few games in 2020. Yeah. It was weird. He opted out, opted out again. He didn't have a great 2020. His 2019 tape is great. After the 2019 season, I know he was being talked about as a potential top 10 pick. So I think he's a guy that we've heard insiders say is a guy to watch out for in the first round. But just the general public, he's probably not on everyone's radar, so that could surprise some people. And talking about another linebacker, I think his name has kind of cooled off a little bit, but I think we're not really sure where we could see Micah Parsons go. He could possibly go 7 to the Lions, but I think we could see him in the 20s. It's hard to see where people stand on him with his character concerns. And I think he was really hyped up to be a top 5 talent. And I don't see him as a top 5 talent. We posted our linebacker rankings today. So I don't see him as a top 5 talent. And I think he's a guy that we could see fall. And, staying on the linebackers, Zaven Collins is a guy that the general public seems to be lower on than both of us and what seems like the NFL. So I think he's a guy that Breer said he might go top 20 as well. So I would say don't be shocked if we see both Jamin Davis and Zaven Collins go ahead of Micah Parsons. And if that happens,
wow.
I think that would be due to character concerns. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying don't be shocked if it does.
I think the order that these linebackers come off the board is going to be really interesting, especially because we haven't heard that many specific team-to-player connections. And you want to throw up Walter's comment right here? I think that could give an answer to that real quick. I've actually just heard that a specific team has Robert Rochelle from Central Arkansas, so definitely a small school corner, graded in the 3rd round. So he could be a guy who goes off the board earlier than people think. I'm not nearly as high on him, but I know Tony Pauline from Pro Football Network said that a specific team has him a 3rd round grade on him. So I would watch out for that.
And Tony Pauline didn't give the team. Just Costa's not hiding the team from us. He didn't give a team. They have a draft board from a team, which is just kind of mind blowing to us. Like, how do you get a hold of that? I know Tony Pauline's pretty big in the media, but I don't know how a team gives a whole draft board to a guy like Tony Pauline.
Yeah, and to move on to our next question, we actually received questions about pick 56, which is the Seahawks, pick 57, which is the Rams, and pick 58, which is the Chiefs. So we'll just go through those in order. And the first one is, should the Seahawks trade back from pick 56? Absolutely yes. They have 3 picks in the draft. That is just the worst possible way to build a Super Bowl team, and you've got to trade back. And they have such a habit of picking players that aren't really valued at that pick that they could get much later. So whoever they're intending on picking at 56, they should definitely be trading down and accumulating more picks. And they could probably get whoever they were targeting at 56 later anyway. So, I mean, this is a no-brainer trade down scenario for me.
Yeah, I think they need a trade back. Like you said, 3 picks in the whole draft. Mm-hmm. That's awful. And I understand they use those picks to trade for, Jamal Adams, improve their offensive line, but I mean, 3 picks is not how you improve your team. And like you said, the Seahawks always end up overdrafting guys. And they do decently well in the later rounds anyways. I think if you look back all the way to the early 2010s with guys like Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, Russell Wilson in the 3rd round.
Averill.
Yeah, they hit on guys all the time in late day 2 and day 3. So if I'm the Seahawks, I mean, it's the same head coach, same general manager. You need to trade back to accumulate more picks, and you probably have a better chance on hitting on those guys in their respective draft spots than you do with your guy that you're going to pick at, 56?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good answer. And so the next question is, should the Rams go offensive tackle or edge rusher at pick 57? And I mean, I think that they should just look to get the best value that they can get. And I think that I was looking at my positional rankings before that, and according to those, I really think that the better value will be at edge rusher at 57, because I think that next tier of 2nd round offensive tackles is gonna be gone. Like, guys that I like at the top of round 2, like Sam Cosmi and Alex Leatherwood, are probably going to be off the board. But then the tier of edge rushers that I have in that range, there's probably going to be 1 or 2 of them left. Maybe Joseph Ossai, maybe Patrick Jones. I think Patrick Jones will be there. Some people are just nowhere near as high on him as you and I are. And I think that would definitely be a much better pick, instead of reaching for an offensive tackle that has really 3rd round talent.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it comes down to which players fall to them at 57. And offensive tackle is such a highly important position. Similar to quarterback, they always seem to be overdrafted a little bit. So, like you said, guys that we might have ranked in the 50s range are probably going to be gone. I think Sam Cosmi is definitely going to be gone. Alex Leatherwood will probably be gone. Eichenberg seems like he'll be gone. Maybe even guys that we have ranked in the 3rd round, like Brady Christensen.
I don't think Dylan Redunz will be there.
Redunz probably won't be there. So I think that if they want to take a tackle at 57, they'll have to reach really high, and that's not how you want to draft. And I think, like you said, the edge rusher class, people hate on this edge rusher class because there's not one guy at the top that's, Chase Young, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa. This is a really good edge rusher class, and it's really deep. In the day 2 guys, I think some guys that might be there, I don't know. Maybe I don't think Jason Owe is there.
No way.
I'm trying to look at the guys that I have ranked there. Patrick Jones, I think he would be a good pick.
Definitely be there.
He definitely will be there. But in all honesty, if Patrick Jones isn't there, I'm not sure any of the other edge rushers that I have ranked in that range will be there either.
I think that's there's not. I would be shocked if every single one of the guys that we have in the range. I know I have 6 guys ranked or graded in the first half of round 2. I would be really surprised if none of them were there. I'll just run through that right now. My edge rushers in the top of round 2. I have Joe Tryon, Joseph Osai, Carlos Basham, Gregory Rousseau, Patrick Jones, and Jason Owa. I think one of them will be there for sure. I would be really surprised. And I think that's probably Patrick Jones, and I think that would be a better pick than whatever offensive tackle is still there, given that these offensive tackles are really going to be flying off the board before that.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. One of the 6 guys, and I have Ronnie Perkins there. I know you're a little lower on him than I am. So I think there's those 7 guys right there that they could probably take at that 57 spot. That would all be good value. But edge rusher is a really important position, and all these guys, most of these guys, at least, like Owe, like Tryon, like Rousseau, they have really high upside. So I think I wouldn't be surprised to see 4 of these guys go in the early part of round 2. So I think because edge rusher is such an important position, so I think round 2 is where we're going to see a lot of edge rushers go off the board.
I agree. And to move on to pick 58, the question was, will Elijah Molden be available at this pick? And this is the Chiefs' pick. And I mean, my ears kind of perked when I read this question because I think this will be a really good pick. And I do expect him to be available. I think that because he didn't test that well, because he's just not an elite athlete, he'll be available. And he's just a lot better of a football player than a pro day workout guy. Because, I mean, he's really good instinctually, just really smart football player who can do whatever really you ask him on the back end, really good in run support, definitely can cover slot receivers or running backs out of the backfield. And I think for the Chiefs, they could definitely use a guy like that on the back end. They already have Tyrann Mathieu, who's that just do everything back there. But I think that they could take another guy who's kind of that hybrid corner/safety in Elijah Molden and to shore up that secondary. So I think he will be available at 58, and I think that would be a great pick at 58.
Yeah, I'm not going to be really upset about Molden and like scouting report, but I think, like you said, his instincts are really good. He's just a football player. I mean, if you watch him on tape, he just looks like a guy that you'd want on your football team, and I think it would be a really good pick, like you said, for the Chiefs. And we haven't really talked about this Chiefs trade, so I think we could maybe take a minute or 2 to touch on that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really good trade for both sides, honestly.
Let's recap it first. It was Orlando Brown got traded from the Ravens to the Chiefs for pick 31, and then with Orlando Brown, the second rounder was sent to the Chiefs, and there was a few other picks of change after that.
Yeah, so I thought it was a good trade for both teams. I think Orlando Brown obviously wanted to get out of Baltimore. He wanted to play left tackle, and they weren't going to let him do that. They shouldn't. They have Ronnie Stanley, who's a better left tackle.
Yeah.
So they got a first-round pick for a guy that didn't want to be there, which is always great. But I think the Chiefs won the trade. I mean, giving up pick 31 for Orlando Brown, I think Brown's better than any tackle that would have been there available for them at 31. And they got another second-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they basically got a really good left tackle, and they only dropped down a round. And I know first-round picks are very valuable, but at the end of the day, the Chiefs' biggest need was offensive line, and they filled that need by trading away pick 31, and they got a better player than they would have had at their disposal at pick 31.
I totally agree, and I don't want to reiterate what you said because I'd be saying pretty much the same thing. I think at the end of the day, it's just a win-win trade for both teams, and I'm excited to see what Baltimore does with these 2 first-rounders. I think edge rusher is going to be a position of focus, but it's always interesting when a team has like a couple picks really close to each other in the first round. So I want to see how they'll address that on Thursday night. And we both talked about this before, but that pick 31, it could really be a sweet spot for somebody looking to trade back into the first round and get one of the couple guys left on their board that has a first round grade. And because we very often see pick 31 or 32 end up being traded away for those reasons. So they could even get more out of this Orlando Brown deal by doing that. So that's something to keep an eye out on. And so our next question is, we have a couple of guys who were asked our thoughts on them. And the first one's Elijah Moore. So you want to give your little rundown on what you think of him, the wide receiver from Ole Miss?
Yeah, so Elijah Moore was a really watch for me. And I wrote a scouting report on him that's on the Instagram page. So if you want to read that whole thing, you can go check that out. But I'll just recap that a little bit. I think he's dynamic with the ball in his hands. But he's a slot receiver. He's not going to be a number one receiver. There's talk about him going in the first round, which to me that's a little rich. I have a mid-second round grade on Elijah Moore, 2.6 to be exact. I think he's good with the ball in his hands. He has solid hands. He'll make a really reliable guy in the slot, especially for a young quarterback. I think he's a guy that, if the quarterback's getting pressured or something, he'll be a guy with reliable hands that he can just dump the ball off to. But he was a guy I liked until I started hearing that first round buzz. I think there's multiple wide receivers that I would take ahead of Elijah Moore, including guys like, Terrace Marshall, Eskridge, Kadarius Toney, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And those guys haven't really gotten too much first round buzz. Obviously Toney a little bit, but it seems like he's not going to go first round anymore. So it was weird. He was a guy I liked until he started getting pushed up draft boards, and now he's in the conversation.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty simple evaluation because he's just going to be a really reliable slot receiver, and he has that extra gear, that deep speed that a lot of slot receivers don't have, which will make him almost elite in that category because he has the ability to stretch the field on top of really good quickness, route running, toughness, hands. So he's going to make for a really good slot receiver. But for me, his lack of height, lack of size, lack of length just limits him. He's not going to, he doesn't excel in contested catch situations. His catch radius is pretty limited, which is a knock because you want these guys who can really rise above the catch zone and corral these off target throws. And that's the reason that I have Amon-Ra St. Brown just a little bit ahead of him. Along with all the other guys you listed, because I see St. Brown being able to leap into the air, extend, and pluck an off-target throw more than I see that from Elijah Moore. So I think Elijah Moore is going to be a really good slot receiver, but I think he's limited to the slot. People are bringing up some inside-outside versatility, but I don't think he can line up on the outside. And so he'll just be a really good number two receiver from the slot. He has the ability to stretch the field, get a couple deep shots from the slot, which is really important and gives your offense another dimension. So in round two, I would like drafting him in that middle to late portion of round two. But if he's going like late first, early second, I think that's a little rich compared to some of the other wide receivers that are on the board who really can play inside or outside and that just have much more expansive catch radius.
Yeah, and what a great receiver they had. Ole Miss. They had DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, and Elijah Moore. That's really impressive, and that was at a time when they were still under their punishments or whatever they had a recruiting scandal a few years ago. So they couldn't hand out a lot of scholarships. They were banned from bowl games. So it's really impressive that they could still get those three guys a wide receiver.
Yeah, and then none of them were even that productive, which is crazy. I think that offense definitely could have been run better than it was, given the talent that we're seeing now that these guys are taking over the NFL.
Yeah, I think we can move on to our last question of the night. And it's about another player and just asking for our thoughts on Quincy Roche.
Yeah, I think that he's a speed rusher. He's really athletic, tested well at his pro day because he can really get you off the edge with the get off, with the bend. But that's kind of the only thing that he has right now in his toolbox. He's not really refined in terms of pass rushing moves. And I think it really comes down to him being a finesse player and he gets control at the point of attack. He's not big enough for the edge. He's not strong enough. And I think until he really manages to improve in that area, he's just going to be a situational edge rusher or pass rusher on obvious pass rushing downs. I don't see him coming into the league and being a starter immediately. So I gave him an early 4th round grade for that. Right now I'm not even sure he will be able to develop into a guy that can set the edge against the run or or use any sort of power to get by the offensive tackle. I think that there could be an adjustment in the NFL because of that difference in size and strength that he'll encounter on the edge.
Yeah, I mean, he was transferred to Miami from Temple. He had a really good, I think it was 3 seasons at Temple before he transferred. And, you know, he was a guy that came into Miami with high expectations, but he was kind of outshined by Jalen Phillips this year. So I agree with pretty much what you said. He's at best, in my opinion, a situational pass rusher. I don't think he's great against the run. He kind of just gives you that athleticism and that burst and that get off to get to the quarterback. He's a guy that definitely upped his draft stock with his pro day performance. But, you know, I don't want to reiterate everything you said. He's not the biggest guy either. He's only like 245, I think. So he kind of struggles against big, powerful offensive linemen. He can get pushed around a little bit. I think he'll be a solid situational pass rusher and backup, but he's not a guy that I really see being a every down starter in the NFL.
I agree, and that wraps up the 10-pack of questions that you guys gave us. And man, draft week is upon us. It's really exciting. We have our last positional rankings coming out. Quarterback and running back. You could argue that we saved the best for last. On Tuesday, we'll have our big boards up, our top 150 each, and then I think Thursday morning we'll be posting our each 7-round mock draft final edition. It's an exciting week to be following Bull Take Scouting Podcast, and we're back tomorrow night with another podcast episode at the normal Monday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, where we'll really be breaking down the big boards and positional rankings that we've posted. But instead of just giving them to you again, we'll really be going into where we differ from consensus and giving our explanations for that, and where we differ from each other, guys that we have ranked differently, orders of rankings, grades, etc., and kind of just give our own perspectives on why we made those decisions. So if you want that breakdown, make sure to come back tomorrow night and follow us on Instagram for all of the content that's coming this coming week and after the draft as we analyze everything, of course.
Yeah, I think this is obviously a really exciting time. Draft week is crazy. I think watch out for smoke screens. There's going to be a ton this week, especially I think Monday is where it really starts. You get all the Monday morning splash reports and stuff come out from what people have heard over the weekends. Obviously, everyone's draft meetings are wrapped up pretty much, so you're going to start to hearing some true rumors, but then also some ones that you just be wary of the things you're hearing. Think if some things just are completely illogical. And yeah, we'll be back again tomorrow, like you said, breaking down our positional rankings and our big board. And then we'll be posting we each have a 7-round mock draft that we'll be posting Thursday morning. And obviously that's the morning of the draft. So yeah, Costa, anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
No, I think that's all.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. And we'll be back tomorrow for a special big board breakdown for this draft week.